north of Tikrit, 23,000 are running and back Shia militia troops gaining ground, hoisting flags, patrolling, and retaking the town. A hint today that the U.S. role could grow. The Pentagon looking at a possible no-fly zone over parts of Syria to protect U.S.-backed rebels from being attacked by Bashar al-Assad's forces.
All right, let's get back to work. Once again, joined by former Pennsylvania Congressman Robert Wexler, and here in the studio, former CIA analyst Lisa Ruth joins us. I'm sorry?
You said Wexler.
I said Wexler. I'm sorry. See, but that was Wexler because of that. Thank you very much, Congressman. I appreciate that. See, that's what happens when I write down the wrong one. Robert Walker, I should know better, and there you go. Hey, Congressman, I'm going to start with you on this right now. We just heard a little bit about the Americans, again, may have to get more involved. ISIS forces taking back Tikrit. There's still that possibility, and there's still that thinking process that the Iraqis cannot do it by themselves, and we're going to have to get involved one way or another. Are we just kidding ourselves every time we talk about this and not get right down to brass tacks?
Well, look, I mean, ISIS is ultimately a manageable threat if we do the right policy, and that probably means that we at least have to put some special forces unit into the fight. It may mean that we have to establish no-fly zones. The Pentagon, I think, has some contingency plans that will actually work to help stem the threat that ISIS is in that part of the world. But we also have to look at the larger picture where we do not want a situation to arise where Iran takes over Iraq at the end of the fighting. And so it's very important that the United States becomes a foreign policy power that in fact has the trust of our allies and the fear of our adversaries. We don't have that at the present time.
All right, now the congressman says exactly what I was going to go to you, Lisa, the trust of our allies when it comes down to America. In all the months that we've talked about this leading up right to this moment, is there any reason to believe that those forces overseas, those Middle Eastern allies, have any greater confidence in us now than they did maybe 6 months ago?
Simple answer, no. And, you know, the fact that we've allowed Iran to lead the Tikrit offensive, essentially, suggests to me that we understand these guys are right next door, they're taking over, and there's a lot of questions about what is the U.S. going to do. And I'd be curious, the congressman's take on this. One of the big problems that I see here is, even when we talk about Tikrit, and the victory there, but it's really not defeating ISIS. What we're seeing, I keep using this term about squishing them to the sides. You know, as we defeat them here, we see that they've launched other attacks here. You know, what is your thoughts on that, Congressman?
Well, from my perspective, we have to look at the plans that the Pentagon has in place that will attack ISIS on all fronts. In some cases, we may be able to use our Iraqi allies in that fight, but ultimately, this is going to have to involve special forces units that are at least advising larger units to take the fight to ISIS in a number of different locales. We can't simply concentrate on particular geographic sites and think that that's going to defeat them. And the fact that Boko Haram has now suggested that they're in alliance, this is growing into a worldwide problem that we have to be very concerned about.
Congressman, here's something else, because we hear now that there's concern from a number of people that Iran is fighting in Iraq. Excuse me? Concern that Iran? It would seem to many people already that we're getting to the point where this war cannot be won unless Iran takes a large hand and unless they become a major force in this military. That's a little bit frightening.
Well, it's very frightening because the fact is that there are many of the states, the Sunni states in the Arab world, that are extremely concerned about Iranian leadership in this kind of a situation. And so a part of the effort here has to be to assure that the alliance that we have with several of those Sunni states includes them actually becoming actively involved in the fight against ISIS and in assuring that Iran does not expand its sphere of influence.
Yeah, I led to this as well, and I wanted to get both your opinions on this. Dennis Kucinich, former congressman, came out with his points about the entire war effort, and he basically said that, and his first point, that ISIS is not a threat to America here in the homeland. I've said that to a couple of analysts already today, and the peals of laughter have been a little bit frightening. Congressman, first to you, and then I'm going to ask you, Lisa, what do you think about that, Congressman, that specific statement?
Well, clearly ISIS has had great success in recruiting people into its cause. There's no reason to believe that they can't recruit lone wolf kinds of terrorists that would attack directly in the homeland. And so they are a threat in the area of the world in which they're large, but they're also a threat in those areas of the world, such as the U.S., where they may not be on the ground, but are small enough and terror-filled enough to cause us a problem.
Is Congressman delusional?
No.
No, not this congressman. I'm talking about Congressman Kucinich, not Congressman Walker, but is Kucinich delusional?
Here's the thing. You've got two issues, and as our non-delusional congressman said, we know for a fact that there's a lone wolf problem. You and I have talked about this continually. These guys don't even have to do anything, and they have people, except go on social media, and they have people following. But the other cold, hard reality is that in terms of capabilities, this is a very well-funded, very well-trained, very international group. I read something the other day that they have psychologists who profile everybody who comes into ISIS, who comes from overseas, and decide where their best fit is. This is a group that to say they're not a threat to the homeland is naive at best, delusional on the other side. I can't even understand what would be behind that statement.
Congressman, about a minute left here, and I want to just get your take on this because Rand Paul says that the key to this is to give the Kurds their own country. Is he correct?
Well, that involves an awful lot of concerns. Our Turkish allies would be very concerned about that particular eventuality. And I happen to think that the Kurds probably should get consideration in that regard, but there's a lot of balancing act that has to be done before it takes place.
20 seconds, Lisa. What do you think the Turks would say?
Well, you left me speechless here. Again, as the congressman said, we're talking about so many different layers and so many difficulties. And frankly, I'm not even sure Kurds are our friend today, but I think we have to be very, very careful in whatever policy we come to.
See, that's something else to discuss. The Kurds may not be our friends today, depending on what's happened in all the years and all the months we've talked about this. We'll continue this discussion as well. Congressman Robert Walker, always a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. Thank you so much.
Okay.
We'll talk to you again. Lisa Ruth, always a pleasure to have you here. We'll absolutely talk to you again soon as well.
Thank you.
All right, later on this hour, from Ground Zero in Oklahoma, and what a student reporter has been hearing from her peers in the wake of a bus ride chant that has turned the school and perceptions of fraternities inside out. It's coming up here on MidPoint.